So, does movement training build muscle? We can take a look. So, in this video, I'm going to go through some of the areas in the body that movement training is going to develop extremely well. So some of these pros. But I'm also going to go through some of the more like a cons, some of the areas that movement training doesn't necessarily address in the best possible way. If you have been following this channel for a while, you probably know that I do a host of different types of training, not just movement training. But the movement training has had a huge impact on the looks, on the performance, on the function of my body, and especially when we go back like many years, because that was pretty much the only type of training that I did. And it was the training that really developed and built the sort of not just like a performance-wise the athletic base, but also the aesthetic base for my body. So many years ago, if we go to the back, like I have a story from my high school times. This was the time when I was doing like these Jackie Chan stunts and moves because I was watching his movies. I was trying to copy like Bruce Lee martial arts moves with my friend. I was doing calisthenics, bodyweight training, and basically kind of like this preliminary movement training phase that I had. That was the only type of training that I did, and I knew nothing about training. I didn't know anything about the good form, whether, you know, how to lift weights or something like this. But my body was still relatively developed. When I was walking on the corridor in the school, I had a couple of friends who went to the gym, were like pretty buff dudes, and they trained at the gym like all these weight movements. They insisted that I was training at the gym like somewhere secretly, because I had like fairly relatively developed musculature in my body already at this point. Like they were looking at my bicep, my arm development for all the calisthenics and hanging stuff, the shoulder development, the chest development, and they really couldn't think that you could develop that without weights. But I didn't touch weight because I was actually afraid of them at that point. But so movement training, some bodyweight calisthenics skill training was developed my body already amazingly well to the point where it stand out from the rest, even aesthetic wise, without me knowing anything about really training. So there are certain things that movement training develops extremely well. And one of the areas that I already mentioned is the shoulder region. So movement training, all the crawling motions that you're doing, really it doesn't only build up, for example, the anterior part of the deltoid. It builds up also the lateral part right here that you can also see pops out here, the anterior part, the rear deltoid area, like this entire shoulder structure get developed. And the reason is because you're going to be in so many different planes. I've already gone through, like you can sometimes be shoulder is overhead, sometimes it's 45, sometimes forward, sometimes I'm here. You know, when I'm doing these kind of motions on the ground here, it's like circling in all of these directions. Lizard crawl, you know, doing this here, my shoulders move in all planes. So it's unbelievable, like the pump that you can get into the shoulder region area. And it's not only the deltoid. So we can just, because deltoid is this area here, the one that like pops out. But one of my favorites that really comes from is the shoulder girdle development. Because we talk about supportive strength. What really creates the support in the shoulder is not really so much the deltoid even, of course it plays a part, but it's what's surrounding the deltoid. So for example, the serratus. So the serratus muscle is here, which is also called the boxer's muscle, because when you punch, it pulls the shoulder blade, scapula forward, so you can like reach with your punch. It's always like there, bam. It's just like kind of like, poof. Like you can do any kind of hit like that, and it will start to work. So movement training, usually if I do any kind of like weight training, like bench press or even push-ups, I don't get a sore serratus, almost never. Movement training, I don't even think about the serratus, but because my movement is so dynamic and so bouncy, so elastic when I'm doing the movements, I get like the serratus is incredibly sore sometimes after movement training, like it can be for a long time. And why? Because this is the sort of supportive structure, and in movement training use it so much to really keep the shoulder blade in a good position and to be able to produce force in those multiple different positions where your shoulders get to. So fantastic development for the shoulders, for the serratus. For some people also it develops the chest very well. For me, it was not the best for my chest development, but it did develop it to an extent. And also like the strength wise, I didn't get a huge like a bodybuilder chest, but the strength wise I did. So that's like going here, this region. Then we can go to the arms, for example, the triceps. The tricep development in movement training is also very huge, and what was for me, because this is the muscle that really supports always. Even when I'm doing catwalk or something, it's all active like this, even though I'm not bending much. If I start to do the crouching tiger from the Movement Train XX, this is like, it's incredible. The lizard crawl, this is all like triceps. So especially develops like these parts here, even the lower parts, because you're in such a cramped up position, flex from the elbow. So that's one part of the tricep development that you can get. The other part is grab walks. This develops the long head of the triceps. So here you can probably see even quite well the muscles. They usually bulge out in this position, and you can see, I mean, just staying here, I'm not doing anything, and it's active. You try to do some meters, some distance of grab walk, and your triceps are going to be burning like crazy. Right, so the tricep development, it will build muscle over there as well. So, but the major part, which what I can really talk about and has really probably separated my physique also from many other people, is the core development. Because the core structure here is which almost every single movement that you're going to be doing is going to be developing. And not just like, for many people, they only consider like, okay, you have the six pack like here on the center. But that's not the only part of the core. You also have here, you have the obliques. So this is something that I had from quite early on, and I did not do isolated ab training. Actually, like, I didn't see any point. I see a point there nowadays, and I do part of also isolated ab training. But on those times, and for many years, I did zero isolated ab work. Like some hanging leg raises here and there, maybe. But most of the core development that I got in a complete corset, like developing this complete corset of the the center abdominals, the rectus abdominis, and then the obliques, internal and external oblique region, was through movement training. Because you're constantly in this kind of dynamic plank position, you are going to be side bending, you are going to be rotating. Many times you're almost like in this partial like a side plank position, and you're twisting, you're rounding. If I'm doing for example, if I'm doing a cartwheel, like here, like this also develops. Just being able to carry your body from here to the other side. Whoops. But so all of those movements, being able to where you're twisting, bending, rotating, all of that type of stuff, without you even noticing it. It's not like you don't even necessarily get like a huge pump or like super soreness or something like that. It just gets developed through daily motions. You can think about like if you see like some of those like Aboriginal people or people of the time, or hunter-gatherers, like they had very developed body, midsection, shoulders, even arms to some extent. They were not going to the gym to train, but they had a good development because of their daily tasks, their daily doings. They weren't going for the pump or something like this. You can develop your muscles to an extent without, or to a great extent without like specifically doing even exercises for it. So the core development is insane that you can get with movement training. Actually, to many times it can be much better than just doing your sit-ups or something like this. And develop also much more complete, much more aesthetic midsection. So the leg part, then we can take a look, like for example my quadriceps, my calf development. Like I have there's a good separation also in the leg parts, because there's also there's a host of movement training that also is done for the legs. And this is, for example, a little while ago I posted a video of some of the hardest like animal jumping movements. You have the bunny, the bunny hops, you have the Bigfoot walk here, and so on. All of these dynamic jumping drills, the flea hops, all of this is like one of the most intense stuff that you can do for your quadriceps. For example, even the sparrow, where the legs get like really bent up, and you need to produce like basically from the bottom of pistol squat, you need to jump yourself up. That's like very intense, one of the most intense practice you can do for your legs. Like you can get like a 1 week sore muscles just from doing that. And it builds up the quadriceps, it builds up the glutes, it builds up the hamstrings. and it can build up also a lot of bulk in there, because being able to produce that kind of dynamic force, it builds up the size, actually the size of the muscle. So those are some of the major benefits of movement training. Going through more like a bit of like limitations that there are is obviously to some extent some of the pulling muscles won't get developed. For example, just like this kind of rowing muscles. You're not really doing any type of rowing while you're doing this kind of annual crawl movements. But there's also the aspect that the rowing muscles, for example, pull-ups or something, they develop heavily the latissimus muscles, like here, this part. But there are other functions that, for example, lat displays. Because when I'm doing movements, I'm often actually utilizing this. I'm just not utilizing it for the pulling, but I'm utilizing it for stabilizing. For example, pushing the scapula down. Like if I'm here doing like something like this, I might at some point just pull this down, like, or even like here doing something, or in this position, the grab position here, when I push my shoulder down, the latissimus is activated. So there are the shoulder development or the back muscle development, even upper back, trapezius and everything, it gets developed in relation to the stability function of those muscles, not necessarily to the direct function of pulling to a certain direction, but keeping again the shoulder in a good healthy position in order to produce strength. This is one of the things that it actually does. In the upper back, for example, you can look at because to some extent these pull-ups and chin-ups are overrated. Also, people think like, well, if you don't do pull-ups or chin-ups, you get like imbalance or something, which is not the case at all. Like for example, you can do pressing movement or like even bench press or something in a very good posture where your shoulders are not even going forward like this way, because people are like, bench press pulls your shoulders here. No, like that is just simply a bad posture. You can do bench presses a lot and you can still have amazing posture without doing any pull-ups or chin-ups actually. But it depends like what kind of other type of postural training you do. You can just, keep your shoulder blades behind you. You can do different type of raises and so on. You don't necessarily do through pull-ups. And the same thing, like if you look at some ballet dancers or something, they have amazing development in their upper back area because they hold a certain posture all the time. And they do these dance movements where they need to utilize their shoulders as well. So movement training actually builds up in many movements the upper back muscles. But the big, huge bulk to the lat muscles, that is something that you need to actually utilize the weights for. So upper arm development, I already talked about how well it develops like the tricep section in many exercises, but the bicep area, that is not something that gets usually developed to full extent, because in most movements, the bicep is going to be more or less like relaxed. So that is definitely one area that requires you to actually utilize weights. You can do pull-ups, chin-ups, you can do just regular bicep curls, whatever you want, but it's definitely something that you don't get much activation. There's a few movements that actually engage biceps during movement training, but not so much. So movement training is definitely going to build muscle, a great amount of muscle, but there are limitations, for example, regards to certain pinpointing certain areas in your body. Because movement training, if you want to become like this blown up balloon bodybuilder, that's probably not going to happen. Like you can be very hard, sinewy muscle tissue, very solid physique that you can build. Think about more like a fighter physique. Fighters develop their bodies with large extent to movement training because fighting is so dynamic. Martial arts movement, dancing or something like that. So you're gonna be like this streamlined, athletic, sinewy, muscle tissue filled physique. That's something you can build, which is very holistic, whole body movements. But this is also where the minus is, because you're not going to develop any particular area necessarily to its fullest extent. And you can have certain weak, stubborn areas that will not get addressed, no matter how versatile movement you do. If you have very stubborn postural issue in your body, you're probably not going to address it. For example, like I said, my chest never got developed to a great extent with movement training, but when I did push-ups, oh man, I developed my chest very well because it gave me the opportunity to fully 100% focus on that area. So that's the limitation, and where the limitations of the movement training come, that's where the athlete training exercise system only begins, because the athlete training is the complete opposite in a way, in that it gives the tools to laser focus, pinpoint in the deepest possible manner in the specific muscle group or even an individual muscle in your body. And that's really what it's for, because with movement training, you cannot or it's going to be very hard and difficult to target areas like with this kind of laser focus. So this is why the Athlete 20X system it supplements, it complements what is missing from the movement training. Like together they both offer amazing benefits, but together they're only like one side of the bigger picture, or separately, and together they make this complete package of developing this athletic, limber and body that is capable of moving. And on the other hand, the training that develops every single area, it refines the muscles of area, it refines the stubborn postural issues that would not otherwise get defined. And it contains the different pulling exercises, everything to increase the awareness of your posture. So when you utilize that sort of consciousness to more free type of movement training, that creates some outstanding results. So movement training, like I said, there's no question about it. You can build really impressive muscle with it, but you need to remember that, even I am doing a host of other type of training as well. The movement training built me an amazing base, and it's still the marks of it are in my body, in the core, in my shoulder area, and so on. But I also learned to do much more refined training that actually complemented my physique, fixed a lot of weaknesses, and actually made me even much better at movement later on. And on top of this, there's all the conditioning training, the Warrior 20X training, all of this that really makes, again, one additional layer to your physique. So you want to try movement training to develop your body. That's possible. Don't think that you only you necessarily need weights to become this muscular aesthetic physique. That's not the case at all. So that's it, guys. If you have any comments, questions, and if this was a very eye-opening video for you, let me know in the comment section. I will be happy to read your comments, guys. Take care and stay strong.